Okay, so yesterday we looked at these three different techniques of wet on dry, wet into wet, and graded wash. Today we're going to be looking at lifting, resist, graded wash with two colors, and I'm going to show you guys how to do those things, okay? Now, first things first. From yesterday, some of you, your paints may be dry. If your paints are dry, what you do is you just dip your paintbrush into the water, and you put a drop of water onto the dried paint, and that's going to start to reactivate it later. Okay, if your paint was wet and it moved around, you need to grab a paper towel and wipe it up and clean it up so that way it's not getting all muddy and dirty. Okay, now, when I look at my sheet, here, guys, I'm talking. You need to be sitting and waiting for me to be done here. That's on the video. How cool is that? Okay. All right, so here's the deal. So when I'm looking at lifting here, it tells me that I'm going to paint a sphere, I'm going to include the cast shadow, and lift the highlight. So it's giving me the directions right there. Then I'm going to paint a massive color and then lift highlights to create a cloud form. All right, what does that look like? Okay, well, before I do that, before I show you exactly, painting a sphere, down at the bottom is my sphere example. So you want to make sure that you look at this when creating the sphere. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do, there's my example of what it's going to look like at the end. So I come in over here, and the first thing I'm going to do, okay, no, I'm not going to sketch it first, that was a good question, is I'm going to decide which colors I'm going to use. So I'm going to go with a red sphere. So I'm going to come in here. All right, now, all I do for the sphere is I come right in here and I just turn my paintbrush around, and look what I do is I created a circle. How hard was that? It wasn't so difficult, right? I didn't have to draw it out. It's because I got mad skills. All right. Now, what I'm going to do to start creating my shadow. Now, by the way, which technique did I use to paint the circle? Wet on dry. Thank you very much. Very good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here with a little bit of green for my shadow. So what color scheme am I using?
Complementary.
Complementary, yeah. See, I just put a little bit of green in there. It's got a little bit too much water in there, so I dab off my brush. Okay, come in here with a little bit of green. Notice it's just a little bit of green. I'm putting this just in my cast shadow. Okay. Brush it off a little bit. And I start to kind of blend it in a little bit more. Is this making sense? I'm just creating a little sphere. Okay. So it starts to create a little bit of sense of roundness in there. That's not blended enough yet, because I'm probably going to have to wait for some of this to dry a little bit before I do it. But you get the idea. But you notice I forgot my highlight. Okay? So what I do is I wind up grabbing some paper towel. The white paper towel is the best to use. I have a roll of it over here that you'll be able to grab one small sheet. And all I do is I basically crumple this up, and I come in here to the light area, and I push down, and I lift it up. See how I got lighter? That's lifting. I'm literally lifting the color up. Okay? With watercolor, you will never get back to the white of the paper. It's just not going to happen. Watercolor is not very forgiving that way. So, you have to make sure that you try to leave the light areas as much as possible. But you could always lift a little bit, you see? So now it starts to look a little bit rounder. That's not done yet. But you get the idea, right? Okay? Now, one of the other requirements is to paint a massive color and then lift highlights to create a cloud form. So what I'm going to do is behind my sphere is I'm going to paint in a little bit of a sky. So I'm going to use a little bit of blue right in here. Okay? I'm going to come into the background. There's my horizon line. Okay? And I just paint in the blue. Right now I'm staying away from my sphere from the red because it's wet, so I don't want it to bleed. So I'm just kind of staying away from it for right now. Okay. Come in here, I'm going to grab more of the blue, so it gets a little bit brighter in there. So I come in here. Now, I'm going to grab, again, I'm going to grab a little bit of my paper towel. I don't need all of it, obviously. What I'm going to do is I'm going to crumple it up just a little bit. Okay? What I'm going to do in here is then, while it's still wet, I come in here and I lift up to create some cloud forms. See that? Just start to look like little fuzzy little clouds. That's all it is. That's all I'm doing. Does that make sense? Yeah. That's it for that part. Okay? Now, down at the bottom, in here, for doing the bottom part over here, I'm going to use, I'm going to create the base, so I'm going to use green down in here for the tabletop. Now, you could use the other colors. You could use your other colors that you have in your palette. That's fine. You don't have to use red, green, and blue. Okay? I come in here, and one thing that you have to remember is that it says that I have to paint the cast shadow, so I come in here with a little bit of red for the cast shadow that's going to go right in here. Once that's dry, I paint over it again with green. Okay? So that way, eventually, it's going to look more like that. You see that? The cast shadow is a darker red, right? And all I did was, after I painted some red down, I let it dry a little bit, put a little bit of green, let it dry, then I put my red right back over it, and that's how I got that. Is that good? Does that make sense? What technique is this? Lifting. What is it good for? Clouds is a good thing. Yeah, it's good for clouds, and it's good for highlights. Exactly. It's also good if you make a little bit, if you put down too much paint, you lift some of it off. Got it? All right.